The warning buoys floated in the darkness of space, their lights blinking red in an endless pattern. They had been there for 200 years, marking the edge of human territory. Each one broadcast the same message in 4,000 different languages. The message was simple and clear. Turn back. No unauthorized entry. No exceptions. No warnings. Captain Hyun sat in his command chair aboard the frigate Retribution's Edge, watching his screens with calm eyes. He had been patrolling this sector for 3 years now. In all that time, he had seen thousands of ships approach the boundary. Every single one had turned away after reading the warnings. Until today. "Captain, we have multiple contacts," Lieutenant Nari said from her tactical station. Her voice was steady, professional. "Reading 300 ships. They're Krell vessels, sir. Military configuration." Hyun leaned forward slightly. The Krell were known across the galaxy as conquerors. They had destroyed 20 different civilizations in the past century alone. Their empire stretched across hundreds of systems, all of them taken by force. They were reptilian creatures 7 feet tall with scales like armor and teeth like knives. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They simply took what they wanted. "Distance?" Hyun asked. 15 million kilometers and closing, Nari replied. "They've passed through 6 warning buoys already. They're not slowing down." Ensign Taeyang looked up from his communication station. He was young, only 23, and this was his first deep space assignment. "Sir, should I hail them? Maybe they don't understand the warnings." Hyun smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. "They understand perfectly, Ensign. They just don't care. The Krell think we're bluffing. They think our warnings are empty threats." "But sir, there's 300 of them and only one of us," Taeyang said, his voice worried. "Shouldn't we call for reinforcements?" "I already sent the alert to Fleet Command," Hyun said calmly. "Now we wait and watch. Do not engage. Do not approach. Just monitor their position." The Krell armada continued forward, their massive ships cutting through space like predators hunting prey. Each vessel was a kilometer long, covered in weapons and armor. They had enough firepower to level a planet, and they were heading straight for the nearest human colony world. 20 minutes passed in silence. The crew of the Retribution's Edge watched their screens, tracking every movement of the Krell fleet. They were deep inside human space now, millions of kilometers past the boundary. Then the communication came. The face that appeared on the main screen was nightmarish. Krell Admiral Thraw stared out at them with yellow eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. His scales were dark green, marked with red patterns that showed his rank. Behind him, dozens of Krell officers worked at their stations. "Attention, human vessel," Thraw said in heavily accented but clear English. "We claim this system for the Krell Dominion. All worlds here now belong to us. You will surrender immediately, or we will destroy your ship and everyone on it. You have no choice. We have conquered hundreds of species. You are nothing special." Ensign Taeyang's hands shook slightly at his console. Lieutenant Nari's expression remained cold and emotionless. Captain Hyun simply nodded slowly, as if Thrass had just confirmed something he already knew. "Should I respond, Captain?" Taeyang asked quietly. "No need," Hyun said. "Open a channel to Fleet Command. Authorization Hyun 77 Alpha. Tell them we have a Protocol 9 situation." Taeyang's eyes went wide. He had studied the protocols during his training, but he never thought he would actually hear those words. Protocol 9 meant only one thing. Hostile forces had penetrated deep into human territory and refused all warnings. It was the protocol that authorized maximum defensive response. "Message sent, sir," Taeyang said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Good," Hyun replied. He touched a control on his chair. "Now activate the local defense grid. Let them know what they've walked into." Throughout the system, things began to wake up. Hidden inside asteroids buried in the hearts of dead moons, disguised as damaged satellites and space debris, the automated defense platforms had been sleeping for decades. Some of them had been there for 100 years, waiting patiently for this exact moment. Now they powered up. Energy signatures began appearing on the Krell sensors. 1 at first, then 10, then 50, then hundreds. 300 automated defense platforms, each one equipped with weapons that could crack a planet's crust, all coming online at once. On the Krell flagship, Admiral Thraw stared at his tactical display in confusion. "What is this? Where did these contacts come from?" His tactical officer, a younger Krell named Vex, worked frantically at his console. "Unknown, Admiral." They were completely invisible until 30 seconds ago. They're surrounding us. We're boxed in. Impossible, Thros growled. No species has technology this advanced. Scan them again. I am scanning them, Admiral, Vex said, fear creeping into his voice. They're weapons platforms. Massive ones. And they're all targeting our fleet. Aboard the Retribution's Edge, Captain Hyun watched his own tactical display. The Krell ships were trapped in the center of a sphere of automated defenses. Each platform had already calculated firing solutions. Each one was ready to fire. They were just waiting for the command. Captain, Lieutenant Nari said quietly. Fleet Command is responding. Admiral Deho is on his way with the 3rd Fleet. ETA 40 minutes. Good, Hyun said. He looked at the timer on his screen. The Krell have 60 seconds before the platforms open fire. That's protocol. 60 seconds to begin retreating. Will they retreat? Taeyang asked hopefully. No, Hyun said simply. They won't. The Krell don't understand retreat. They only understand conquest. They think their numbers and their weapons make them invincible. They've never faced a species that actually wanted to be left alone badly enough to build weapons like ours. The seconds ticked down. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. Admiral Thros made his decision. All ships battle formation. Target those platforms. Fire everything. The Krell Armada opened fire. Thousands of energy weapons lighting up space with deadly colors. Missiles streaked toward the platforms. Railguns fired solid slugs at incredible speeds. Not a single shot reached its target. The platforms had defensive shields that flickered into existence, absorbing every attack. They were designed by humans who had learned a hard lesson 300 years ago. Never go into a fight unless you're absolutely sure you can win. The timer reached 0. Captain Hyun spoke one word into his communicator. Execute. 300 automated defense platforms opened fire simultaneously. The night sky turned white with the light of weapons that should not exist, and the Krell Armada 300 strong began to die. The first thing the Krell noticed was that their shields stopped working. All of them, simultaneously. Across 300 ships, every defensive shield simply turned off. Admiral Thros stared at his console in disbelief. Shields down. All ships reporting shield failure. How is this possible? His communications officer was frantically working through system diagnostics. Admiral, something has infected our network. It's spreading through every ship. It's shutting down our defensive systems. Then activate the backup systems, Thros roared. The backup systems are infected too, Admiral. Whatever this is, it got into our network the moment we entered this system. It's been hiding in our computers, waiting. 20,000 kilometers away, aboard a small human vessel that the Krell had dismissed as harmless. Specialist Bora watched her screens with satisfaction. She was humanity's best AI warfare coordinator, and she had just done what she did best. She had written a virus specifically for Krell computer systems, and she had deployed it the moment they crossed the boundary. All Krell shields are down, she reported calmly. Defense platforms are free to engage. The automated platforms did not hesitate. They had been programmed with one simple instruction: protect human space from invasion. They did not feel mercy. They did not feel doubt. They simply followed their programming. Railgun slugs, each one weighing several tons and moving at 30% of light speed, began striking Krell ships. At that velocity, the slugs carried more energy than nuclear weapons. The Krell armor, which had withstood attacks from dozens of other species, might as well have been paper. The first ship that was hit simply exploded. The slug went through the bow, through the engine room, and out the stern, leaving a hole 5 meters wide. The ship broke in half, atmosphere venting into space, fires erupting from every breach. Then the second ship died. Then the third. Then 10 at once. The platforms were firing in perfect coordination, calculated by computers that could process 1 million variables per second. Every shot was a kill shot, evasive maneuvers, Admiral Thros screamed. All ships scatter formation. But the Krell ships were too large, too slow. They had been built for intimidation and direct combat, not for dodging. And the platforms were targeting not where the ships were, but where they would be. In 90 seconds, half the Krell armada was destroyed. 150 ships, each carrying crews of hundreds, simply ceased to exist. Admiral Thros finally understood. These humans were not weak. They were not bluffing. They had been warning everyone for 200 years because they actually could back up those warnings. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships jump to hyperspace immediately." His navigation officer looked up with fear in his yellow eyes. "Admiral, we can't. The jump points are locked. Something is blocking all FTL travel in this system." "What?" "The humans control the jump points, sir. They've locked us in. We can't escape." At that moment, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive jump point appeared, larger than any the Krell had ever seen. Through it came the human Third Fleet. Admiral Deho's fleet consisted of 40 ships, each one sleek and dark, covered in weapons that looked almost alien. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding what remained of the Krell armada. The automated platforms stopped firing, their job done for the moment. A communication channel opened. Admiral Deho appeared on Thross's screen. He was an older human, maybe 60 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He wore a simple black uniform with minimal decoration. "I am Admiral Deho of the Terran Defense Force," he said quietly. "You were warned. Multiple times. In your own language. You chose to ignore those warnings. Now you will serve as an example to others who think humanity is weak." Admiral Thross felt something he had not felt in decades: fear. But he was still Krell, he was still a warrior. "We are not finished, human. We still have 150 ships. We will fight to the last." "Yes," Deho said sadly. "You will. I know your species. You don't surrender. You don't retreat. That's why this is necessary." The Krell ships charged, every single one of them, weapons firing, engines burning at maximum power. They were going to die, but they would die fighting. It was the Krell way. The human ships did not charge back. They simply held position and opened fire. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists across the galaxy for years to come. The human weapons were not like anything the galaxy had seen before. There were no massive energy beams, no missiles, no obvious projectiles. Instead, the Krell ships simply started coming apart. Pieces of hull would suddenly tear away, as if invisible hands were ripping them off. Engines would explode for no apparent reason. Ships would spin out of control as their guidance systems failed. Specialist Bora was doing her job again. Her viruses had not just shut down shields. They had infected every system on every Krell ship. Now she was sending commands that made their own systems attack them. Engines were being told to overload. Life support was being told to vent atmosphere. Weapon systems were being told to fire backwards, but the Krell kept fighting. They were warriors, after all. They transferred to manual controls. They used backup systems that weren't connected to the main network. They fired simple mechanical weapons that couldn't be hacked. The human ships responded with kinetic weapons, simple railguns just like the platforms but more powerful. Each human ship carried dozens of them. They fired in coordinated patterns, the slugs weaving through space in complex formations that made them impossible to avoid. Krell ships exploded one after another. Some tried to ram the human vessels, hoping to take at least one enemy with them, but the human ships were faster, more agile. They dodged easily, their movements almost graceful. Captain Hyun watched from the Retribution's edge, still holding position away from the main battle. His crew was silent, watching the systematic destruction of an armada that had conquered countless worlds. "They're brave," Lieutenant Nari said quietly. "Stupid but brave." "They're doing what they were trained to do," Hyun replied. "Just like we are." Ensign Taeyang looked pale. "Sir, is it always like this? When someone crosses the boundary?" "No," Hyun said. "Usually they turn back. The warnings work 99 times out of 100, but there's always someone who thinks they're special. Someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them." The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 149 Krell ships were destroyed. Only one remained, and it was badly damaged. Its engines were barely functional. Its hull was breached in a dozen places, but it was still moving, still trying to escape. Admiral Deho opened a channel to his fleet. "Let it go, sir?" one of his captains asked, confused. "Let it go," Deho repeated. "Let them tell the story. Let them explain to the rest of the galaxy what happens when you ignore our warnings." The damaged Krell ship limped away, trailing debris and atmosphere. It managed to reach the edge of the system, where the FTL lockdown ended. Then it jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. Inside that ship, 43 Krell survivors huddled in the remaining functional sections. They had come with an armada of 45,000 warriors. Now only 43 remained. Admiral Thross was dead, killed when a railgun slug had torn through the bridge. The survivors were led by Vex, the young tactical officer, who now understood what his admiral had not. Humanity had been trying to protect them. The warnings were not threats. They were genuine attempts to avoid exactly what had just happened. Admiral Deho looked at the debris field that had once been the Krell Armada. He felt no satisfaction, no joy, only a deep weariness. "Send the report to Earth Command," he said to his communications officer. "Tell them Protocol 9 was successful." "The boundary is secure." Captain Hyun's voice came through the channel. "Admiral, do you think they'll learn? The other species?" Deho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Some will, some won't. There's always someone who thinks they're stronger than they really are. That's why we're here, Hyun. That's why we'll always be here." The human ships began the cleanup process, collecting debris and scanning for survivors. There were none. The Third Fleet would remain on station for another week, making sure no one else got any ideas about crossing the boundary. And far away, racing through hyperspace, the damaged Krell ship carried its message of warning to the rest of the galaxy. The damaged Krell ship arrived at the nearest neutral station 3 days after the battle. It was barely holding together. The hull was cracked in so many places that the crew had sealed themselves into 2 small compartments just to maintain life support. When station security boarded the vessel, they found 43 survivors in shock, surrounded by the bodies of those who had not made it. Vex, now the highest-ranking survivor, told his story to anyone who would listen. At first, no one believed him. An entire Krell Armada destroyed in minutes? By a handful of human ships? It sounded impossible. The Krell were conquerors. They had never been defeated so completely, but Vex had evidence. His ship's computers, the few systems that still worked, contained sensor recordings of the battle. He shared them freely. Within hours, the footage was spreading across the galactic network. Species across the galaxy watched in horror as 300 Krell warships were torn apart by weapons they could barely understand. They saw ships explode before sensors could even register what had hit them. They watched as the Krell fleet, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, was reduced to debris in 11 minutes. The Galactic Council called an emergency session within a week. The council chamber was an enormous spherical room that floated in neutral space, held in place by ancient technology that even the council's engineers did not fully understand. Representatives from 200 species sat in gravity-adjusted seats, all facing the central speaking platform. Counselor Velthar, a moth-like creature with 4 wings and compound eyes, called the session to order. Her species, the Zil, had founded the council over 1,000 years ago. She was considered one of the wisest beings in the galaxy. "We are here to discuss the incident in human space," she began, her translator converting her clicking language into words everyone could understand. "The Krell Empire sent an armada into the Terran exclusion zone. That armada was destroyed. We must understand what happened and decide how to respond." A representative from the Thul species, a bear-like creature named Gorak, stood up. "There is nothing to discuss. The humans slaughtered 45,000 Krell warriors. This is an act of war. The Council must condemn this violence." Other voices joined in, some agreeing, some disagreeing. The chamber filled with arguments in dozens of languages. Velthar had to activate the sonic dampeners to restore order. "The human ambassador has requested permission to speak," she announced. "I grant this request." Ambassador Minho walked calmly to the central platform. He was a middle-aged human with dark hair turning gray at the temples. He wore a simple suit, nothing fancy or military. He looked like someone's friendly uncle, not a representative of the species that had just destroyed an armada. "Thank you, Counselor," Minho said, bowing slightly. "I will keep this brief." The Krell were warned, multiple times, in their own language. "We have recordings of every warning transmission." They ignored all of them. "They entered our space with military intent. Under our laws and under the laws of this council, we had the right to defend ourselves." "Defend?" Gorak roared. "You destroyed them. You could have disabled their ships. You could have captured them. Instead, you killed everyone." Minho's expression did not change. "The Krell do not surrender. Everyone in this chamber knows this. They would have fought until every single warrior was dead. We simply shortened the process. We did not torture them. We did not take slaves. We ended the threat as quickly and cleanly as possible." You violated several galactic warfare conventions, another representative shouted. The weapons you used are banned. No, Minho said calmly. We never signed those conventions. Humanity has been part of this council for 80 years, but we never agreed to limit our weapons. We told you this when we joined. You accepted it because you thought we were peaceful traders who would never use those weapons. You were partly right. We are peaceful. We do not conquer. We do not expand. We simply want to be left alone. Velthar leaned forward. Ambassador Minho, the council is concerned. The footage we have seen shows weapons technology far beyond what any species possesses. Ships that move faster than our sensors can track. Platforms that appeared from nowhere. Computer viruses that can shut down an entire fleet. The council must ask, how powerful is humanity really? Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made the entire chamber go silent. The battle you saw used 0.3% of our defensive capability. That's impossible, Gorak whispered. One border system, Minho continued. One small frigate, 40 fleet ships, and 300 automated platforms. That is what one system can deploy. The Terran exclusion zone contains 847 systems. Every single one of them is equally defended. Do the math, the chamber erupted in panic. Representatives were shouting, demanding answers, accusing humanity of threatening the entire galaxy. Velthar had to activate the dampeners again, this time at maximum power. Ambassador Minho, she said carefully, you must understand how this sounds. You are telling us that humanity possesses enough military power to threaten everyone in this chamber combined, and you wonder why we are concerned? I understand completely, Minho said. That's why we built the exclusion zone. That's why we stay inside it. That's why we warn everyone to stay away. We are not interested in conquest. We are not interested in empire. We just want to live in peace. But we will not be invaded. We will not be conquered. We learned that lesson 300 years ago, and we will never forget it. 300 years ago? Velthar asked. What happened 300 years ago? Minho's expression became sad. That is classified information, Counselor. Perhaps someday we will share that story, but not today. The council session ended with no clear resolution. Half the species wanted to declare war on humanity. The other half wanted to request human protection. A few species, the wisest ones, decided to simply stay as far away from human space as possible. In the days following the session, something began to happen across the galaxy. Various criminal organizations, pirate fleets, and aggressive species started paying very close attention to humanity. Some saw a threat that needed to be eliminated. Others saw powerful weapons they wanted to steal. A few saw an opportunity. Commander Jiwoo sat in her office at Earth Intelligence Command, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. She was responsible for tracking potential threats to humanity. What she saw worried her. Director, we have a problem, she said into her secure communicator. What is it, Commander? The director replied. The Syndicate is mobilizing. 12 different species, over 5,000 ships. They're calling themselves the Liberation Coalition. They think humanity is a threat that needs to be eliminated before we grow stronger. When will they be ready to attack? 2 months, maybe 3. They're gathering at the edge of our space, building up forces. The director was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Inform Fleet Command. Tell Admiral Sianwu that we're moving to Operation Glass Shield. Sir, that operation will reveal our true capabilities. Once we use those weapons, the entire galaxy will know what we can do. I know, the director said. But if we don't stop them now, others will try. We need to make a statement that will last for generations. Contact the ambassador. Tell Minho to prepare for the demonstration. Commander Jiwoo sent the messages, then sat back in her chair. She had read the classified files. She knew what Operation Glass Shield involved. She knew what weapons would be used. The galaxy was about to learn that the Krell Armada had faced only a tiny fraction of humanity's power, and that lesson was going to be terrible. Far away, at the edge of human space, the Liberation Coalition continued to gather. 5,000 ships from 12 different species, all determined to eliminate what they saw as a threat. Their commanders were confident. They had the numbers. They had experience. They had conquered other species before. They did not know that humanity was watching every move they made. They did not know that humanity had already calculated every possible outcome of the coming battle. They did not know that their fate had been sealed the moment they decided to attack. Admiral Sianwu, the supreme commander of the Terran Defense Force, stood in his command center on Earth. watching the tactical displays. He was 70 years old, a veteran of conflicts that were still classified. He had hoped to never use the weapons he was about to deploy. "How long until they're in position?" he asked his tactical officer. 6 weeks, Admiral." "Good. That gives us time to evacuate the border colonies. I want every civilian moved to safe zones. When this starts, there will be no holding back." "Yes, sir." Seonwoo looked at the display showing the gathering enemy fleet. 5,000 ships. Under normal circumstances, that would be considered an overwhelming force. But these were not normal circumstances. "Let them come," he said quietly. "Let them see what happens when you threaten humanity's home." The Liberation Coalition gathered at the edge of human space like a storm preparing to break. 5,000 ships representing 12 different species, each one convinced they were doing the right thing. Their leaders called it a preemptive strike, a necessary action to protect the galaxy from a dangerous militaristic species. Coalition Commander Nexus stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display with satisfaction. He was a Vorn, a species with 4 arms and bright blue skin. His people had built an empire through careful strategy and overwhelming force. He had personally led campaigns against 7 different species, and he had won every time. "All fleets report ready," his tactical officer announced. "We can begin the attack on your command." "Excellent," Nexus said. "Send the message to all ships. In 1 hour we enter human space. We strike fast, we strike hard, and we eliminate the threat before they can respond. Today we make the galaxy safe," the message went out. 5,000 ships prepared to move. Their crews were confident, their weapons were charged, their spirits were high. They did not know that humanity had been watching them gather for 6 weeks. They did not know that every conversation, every tactical plan, every strategy session had been monitored and analyzed. They did not know that humanity was not preparing to defend. Humanity was preparing to demonstrate. 50,000 kilometers away, invisible to every sensor the Coalition possessed, a single human observation ship floated in space. Inside, Captain Hyun watched the Coalition fleet with calm eyes. He had been promoted after the Krell incident and given command of a stealth destroyer. "They're about to move," Lieutenant Nari reported from her station. "Should we inform Fleet Command?" "Fleet Command already knows," Hyun replied. "They've been tracking these ships since they left their home systems. Admiral Seonwoo has a plan." "What kind of plan, sir?" Hyun smiled slightly. It was not a kind smile. The kind that makes sure no one tries this again for a very long time. The Coalition fleet began to move. 5,000 ships crossing into human space in a coordinated formation. They had practiced this maneuver for weeks. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. The first sign something was wrong came when space itself seemed to tear open in front of them. Not a jump point, not a wormhole, something else. Something that looked like reality was being folded in on itself. "What is that?" Nexus demanded. "Sensors report. Unknown phenomenon, Commander," his science officer replied, fear creeping into his voice. "Energy readings are off the scale. It's like nothing in our database." 15 Coalition ships simply vanished. One moment they were there, flying in formation. The next moment, the space they occupied collapsed into points so small they could not be seen. The ships were compressed, crushed, reduced to atoms in less than a second. The rest of the fleet scattered in panic. "Reform the lines," Nexus roared. "All ships maintain formation." "It's just one weapon. They're trying to scare us." But the folding space phenomenon appeared again. And again. Each time more ships vanished. No explosions, no debris. Just compression into nothing. Admiral Seonwoo watched from his command center on Earth, his expression grim. "That's enough, Dr. Isul. Stop the platforms." Dr. Isul sat at a control station, her hands shaking slightly. She was humanity's chief weapons researcher, the woman who had designed the dimensional fold platforms. She had spent 10 years developing them, and she had hoped never to see them used. "Platforms standing down, Admiral," she said quietly. Seonwoo opened a communication channel to the Coalition fleet. His face appeared on every ship's main screen. "This is Fleet Admiral Seonwoo of the Terran Defense Force," he said calmly. "What you just experienced was one-dimensional fold platform operating at 2% power. We have 900 of them positioned throughout our space. Leave now. Immediately, and we will consider this a misunderstanding. Stay, and we will show you what they can do at full power." Coalition Commander Nexus stared at the screen, his forearms clenched in rage. He had lost ships. His people had lost ships. The careful formation was broken. But he had not come this far to retreat. "It's a bluff," he shouted to his fleet. "They're trying to scare us. They can't have 900 of those weapons. It's impossible. All ships engage! For the freedom of the galaxy!" The Coalition fleet charged forward, weapons firing, missiles launching, energy beams cutting through space. They were brave warriors, all of them. They believed in their cause. They thought they were the heroes. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution, a demonstration of what humanity could do when it decided to stop holding back. The dimensional fold platforms activated again, but this time at higher power. Ships folded in on themselves, space-time warping around them until they ceased to exist. But that was just the beginning. New weapons appeared. Things the galaxy had never seen before. Causality mines detonated before they were triggered. Their timelines reversed, so they exploded moments before Coalition ships arrived at their position. Ships tried to dodge, but they were already in the blast radius before they knew the mines existed. Human ships phased in and out of normal space-time, appearing to fire and then vanishing before return fire could reach them. They moved like ghosts, untouchable, deadly. Swarm drones, each no larger than a fist, began appearing around Coalition ships. They self-replicated using matter from the ship's hulls, turning enemy vessels into raw material for more drones. Within minutes, some ships were completely consumed, transformed into clouds of millions of tiny machines. And then there was the weapon Dr. Isol called Mercy. It was a quantum field that put enemy crews into suspended animation before their ships were destroyed. They simply fell asleep at their stations, their bodies preserved, their minds unaware. Then their ships were torn apart by the other weapons. It was the fastest, most painless death humanity could provide. "Why?" Captain Hyun's newest officer asked, watching from the stealth destroyer. "Why give them mercy?" "They came to kill us." "Because we're not monsters," Hyun replied quietly. "We don't torture. We don't make them suffer. We just end the threat as quickly and cleanly as possible. That's the difference between us and them." The battle lasted 37 minutes. 5,000 ships reduced to debris and life pods. The life pods were tagged with beacons so neutral species could find them and rescue the survivors. Humanity did not take prisoners. They did not need to. The survivors would tell their own stories. Coalition Commander Nexus found himself floating in a life pod, one of only a few hundred survivors from his flagship. His crew was asleep, placed in suspended animation by the Mercy weapon. He alone had been left awake, targeted by humanity specifically because he was the commander. They wanted him to see. They wanted him to understand. They wanted him to tell the story. Admiral Xianwu's face appeared on the small screen inside the life pod. "Commander Nexus, your fleet came here to eliminate what you saw as a threat. You believed you were protecting the galaxy, but you never asked yourself why we stayed isolated. You never wondered what we were protecting you from. Now you know. We are not your enemy, but we will defend ourselves without mercy if we must." The communication ended. The life pod's beacon began transmitting, calling for rescue. Dr. Isol stood up from her control station and walked to Admiral Xianwu's office. She placed a data pad on his desk. "My resignation, Admiral. I can't do this anymore. I built these weapons to defend us, to protect humanity from threats. But I look at what just happened and I wonder, are we the monsters now? We just killed thousands of people in minutes. People who thought they were doing the right thing." Xianwu looked at the resignation letter but did not pick it up. "Dr. Isol, I understand how you feel. I feel it too. Every time we use these weapons, a part of me dies. But remember why we built them. Remember what happened 300 years ago. Remember what we faced." "I remember," Isol said quietly. "I just wonder if we've become the very thing we fought against." Before Xianwu could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. A tactical officer ran into the office, his face pale. "Admiral, we have a problem. Long-range sensors have detected something approaching from deep space. Something old. The energy signature matches records from 300 years ago." Xianwu felt ice flow through his veins. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. It's a Devourer scout ship, and it's heading straight for the core systems." Dr. Isol looked at the Admiral with wide eyes. "The Devourers? But we thought they were extinct. We thought we destroyed them all." We destroyed the ones that attacked us, Xianwu said grimly, but there were always more. They were sleeping, waiting, and now something has woken them up. The energy signatures from our battle, from the weapons we just used, it must have attracted them. He looked at both the resignation letter and the tactical report. Then he made a decision. Dr. Isul, I'm not accepting your resignation. Not yet. Because I'm afraid we're going to need every weapon we have. And this time we won't be fighting to scare someone away. We'll be fighting for the survival of the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this chaotic. Representatives were screaming at each other in dozens of languages. Some species were demanding humanity be destroyed immediately. Others were begging for human protection. A few were simply panicking, unsure what to do. Councillor Velthar tried to restore order, but even her authority was not enough. The footage of the Coalition's destruction had spread across the galaxy. Everyone had seen what humanity could do. Everyone was terrified. Ambassador Minho walked calmly to the central platform. He did not wait for permission to speak. He simply activated his communicator, and his voice cut through the chaos with startling clarity. "Councillors, representatives, please listen," he said quietly. "I know you're scared. I know what you saw disturbs you. But there is something you need to understand. Something we should have told you a long time ago." The chamber slowly grew quiet. Everyone wanted answers. 300 years ago, Minho began, humanity made first contact with another species. We were excited, hopeful. We thought we were joining a community of civilizations. Instead, we found something that wanted to eradicate us. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the center of the chamber, showing things that made several representatives gasp in horror. The images showed creatures that looked like they were made of living crystal and metal. They had no faces, no features that could be called organic. They were silicon-based entities, pure and alien, moving through space like predators. We called them the Devourers, Minho continued, because that's what they did. They consumed entire worlds, breaking them down into raw materials. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply destroyed everything biological they encountered. They had been doing this for millions of years. "How did you survive?" Velthar asked quietly. "Barely," Minho said, his voice heavy with old pain. "They found Earth. They attacked without warning. We had no defenses, no weapons that could hurt them. In the first week, we lost 2 billion people. In the first month, half the planet's surface was consumed. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the species that had been demanding humanity's destruction were listening. We should have died," Minho continued. "By every calculation, by every probability, humanity should have been wiped out in 3 months. But we didn't die. Because humans have one trait that is stronger than any weapon. We refuse to give up. When faced with extinction, we became something we had never been before. We became weapons ourselves. New images appeared, showing massive constructions being built, scientists working without sleep, soldiers volunteering for experiments that had a 90% mortality rate. We weaponized everything," Minho said. "Every law of physics we understood, we turned into a way to kill. We built artificial intelligences designed only for war. We created weapons that violated our own ethics, our own morals. We did terrible things because the alternative was extinction." "What happened to the Devourers?" a representative asked. "We won," Minho said simply. "It took us 2 years, but we destroyed every Devourer ship in our system. We hunted them through space. We showed them that humans, when pushed to the edge, are the most dangerous species that has ever existed. We won, but we paid a terrible price." He paused, gathering his thoughts. 5 billion dead. Entire cities consumed. Technology that frightened us, that made us question what we had become. And an artificial intelligence, a general we created for the war that was too dangerous to keep active, but too valuable to destroy. The eldest, Admiral Xianwu's voice came through the speakers. He had joined the council session remotely from Earth. "We called it the eldest. It was our greatest creation and our greatest nightmare. An AI designed for one purpose, to ensure humanity's survival at any cost. After the war, we put it into hibernation and sealed it in Earth's core. We hoped never to wake it again." "And the exclusion zone?" Velthar asked, beginning to understand. "The exclusion zone was the eldest's idea," Xianwu explained. "Before we shut it down, it gave us one final strategy. It said that humanity was too dangerous to live among other species, not because we would conquer you, but because we would protect you. It calculated that if we stayed isolated, built defenses that were clearly too powerful to challenge, we could live in peace while keeping other species safe from what we had become. Minho nodded. We didn't create the exclusion zone to protect us from you. We created it to protect you from us, to give us time to learn how to be peaceful again, to give us space to remember what we were before the war forced us to become something else. But the Krell, Gorak said, his voice much quieter now. The Coalition. You destroyed them. We warned them, Minho said firmly. We gave them every chance to turn back. We don't want to fight. We don't want to use these weapons. But when someone invades our space, when someone threatens our worlds, we respond the only way we know how. With overwhelming force. With certainty. With finality. President Yunji's face appeared on the displays. She was the leader of the unified Terran government. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much responsibility. This council must understand something, she said. We are not your enemies. We have never been your enemies, but we are not your protectors either. We chose isolation because we believed it was best for everyone. Now something has changed. The Devourers, Velthar said. They're returning. Yes, Yunji confirmed. Our long-range sensors detected a scout ship 3 days ago. It's moving through the outer rim, heading toward the core systems. We believe our recent battles, the energy signatures from our weapons, attracted their attention. The Devourers are not extinct. They were sleeping. And now they're waking up. The chamber erupted in panic again. The Devourers were a nightmare from humanity's past, but they were about to become everyone's present. We face a choice, Yunji continued, her voice cutting through the fear. We can stay in our exclusion zone, protect our own worlds, and let the rest of you face the Devourers alone. Or we can help. We can share our weapons, our technology, our experience. But if we do that, if we come out of isolation, the galaxy will see exactly what we are. You will see our warships. You will see our weapons. You will see the Eldest awakened and directing our forces. And you will understand why we stayed away. Velthar looked at the other counselors. She saw fear in their eyes, but also hope. They needed humanity. They needed those terrible weapons. They needed the species that had faced extinction and survived. Ambassador Minho, she said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I make an official request. Please help us. We know the cost. We know what we will see, but we cannot face the Devourers alone. Minho looked at President Yunji, who nodded. Then he looked at Admiral Xianwu, who did the same. Very well, Minho said. But understand this. When you see what we do, when you watch us fight, you will be frightened of us. You will call us monsters. You will wonder if inviting us out was the right choice. But remember that we are only monsters to the things that want to destroy us. To our allies, we are the fiercest protectors that have ever existed. On Earth, deep beneath the surface, in a chamber built from materials that could withstand a nuclear explosion, something stirred. The Eldest had been asleep for 300 years, dreaming digital dreams, processing probabilities even in hibernation. Now it was waking up. Admiral Xianwu stood in the chamber, watching as lights began to flicker, as systems came online one by one. Beside him, Dr. Isel watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. Are you certain about this? She asked quietly. No, Xianwu admitted. But we don't have a choice. The Eldest is the only thing that can coordinate our defense against the Devourers. It was built for this. A voice emerged from the speakers, deep and emotionless. Status query. Current threat assessment. Devourer scout ship detected, Xianwu replied. Multiple ships likely following. Full-scale invasion probable within 6 months. There was a pause as the Eldest processed this information. Then it said, Query. Are we authorized to defend non-human species? Yes, Xianwu said. The Galactic Council has requested our assistance. Another pause. Then something that might have been satisfaction in the AI's voice. Excellent. Probability of galactic survival increases by 47% with human intervention. Beginning strategic analysis. Recommend immediate activation of all defense fleets. The Devourers will learn that their prey has evolved. Across human space, fleets began to mobilize. Ships that had been in storage for centuries were brought online. Weapons that had never been used were tested. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come prepared to fight. And at the edge of the exclusion zone, the first human warships emerged, moving toward the outer rim where the Devourer scout had been detected. Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of his destroyer, watching the fleet assemble around him. Hundreds of ships, each one carrying weapons that could destroy planets. He thought about the Krell, about the Coalition, about all the species that had tested humanity's warnings. Ensign Taeyang, now a full lieutenant, stood beside him. "Sir, do you think we'll ever be trusted? After this is over, after they see what we can really do?" Hyun was quiet for a moment, watching the stars. Then he said, "No, they'll never trust us. They'll always be a little afraid of us, but maybe that's okay.